Go ahead and call this workshop into order for October 23rd. City Clerk, if you can please call the roll.
Commissioner Avila-Vasquez. Present. Commissioner Burbank.
Ahoy.
Commissioner Colwell.
Here.
Commissioner Jody Lee.
Here.
Commissioner McCool. Vice Mayor Bradford. Mayor Avila.
Here, can we please stand for the pledge? Commissioner Jody Lee, do you mind leading us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This time we're going to enter into business. Ordinance number 12-2023 to amend Chapter 14, Animals. Workshop to review the comments of mayor, vice mayor, commissioners, and the public concerning items that needed to be addressed or added prior to the second and final reading scheduled for November 6th. Marcia?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There's a draft ordinance out that I believe all of you have, and was passed. We had the request was to look at Palm Beach County and their ordinance and to look at those particular provisions that were raised. And I also had a list of things. I went through the transcript of the meeting and went through all the items that were raised by the commission, the mayor and the vice mayor, and we attempted to put all of those things in this draft. The only thing we didn't do was we didn't deal with guard dogs. Palm Beach County only deals with guard dogs in non-residential areas. We didn't really have anything to follow, so there's nothing on guard dogs here. But the rest of the issues that were raised, if you look at the draft, the underlined part is all new. And then I also asked for a meeting with some of the people that had spoken at the last meeting that had raised their concerns with regard, and I think they're also here this evening. I had code officers there at that meeting so that we could have a conversation about their issues and where the code officers, as far as enforceability, was one of the things we talked a lot about. Also, Danny Ron is here from code. He did have a conversation with Palm Beach County today about enforcement. So that's basically what we have to present. If this moves forward in whatever fashion you all want to move it forward, then it would go to November 6th. That would be the second meeting on this ordinance.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marcia. Danny, Ms. Ron, do you mind coming up and giving us a little bit about the conversation, and then I'll call Commissioner Avila-Vasquez.
Actually, that was mine.
Okay.
Good evening, Commissioners, Mayor. Yes, I did speak with his title is Assistant Director for Palm Beach County Animal Services. So this portion of the ordinance, they installed it sometime between 2015, 2016. I did ask him how was the enforcement portion of it. One of the first things he did bring to my attention is as soon as they placed this in the ordinance, the number of owner surrenders went skyrocket, and they had to kind of adjust. And right now, our Humane Society is at capacities, so that might be a problem, in the future if this direction we go with. Another thing, because they can be out there, but as under our presentation, AC, fan, those kind of things, they do require electrical work, and they do require a permit to obtain that on the property. So we got to look at that also. But that was the conversation we had. Some of the things that they try to adjust with is looking for grants so they can have money to have crates, dog houses for the animal owners, another way for them not to surrender these animals to the Humane Society, another option for them to keep the animal at the home. Maybe during these period of times when it's too cold or too hot to bring them in, but we'll have them in crates and those kind of things. So those are the kinds that they adjust with that. The grant is working well for them. I try to speak to the grant person, I think here in Kimberly, but she wasn't available today, so I couldn't get direction on that. These are the things that came up in our conversation today.
When you say renter or owners to renters, what are you referring to?
Because their thing was, hey, you're putting all these restrictions and rules on me to keep this animal here, I might as well not keep it. I'm just going to turn it into the Humane Society. That was what was happening when this started back. Now, they did adjust. They're not just enforcement, they actually work with the animal owner to, to try to keep that animal at the property. And another way was, what I mentioned was the grant thing. Get a whole bunch of crates, dog houses, that way they can provide this if a property owner decides or animal owner decides that, hey, I want to keep this dog, but this is another option. That way you can bring it into the home, but we'll have the crate provided for you, in areas so you can keep it inside the house in a safe area under the AC or the heat.
Okay, I'm going to ask Marcia one question, then I'll go to Commissioner Jody Lee. Marcia, are we doing the adjustment that Palm Beach County did, or are we doing the original?
No, this is the original, just
original
as it's
version.
written, with the temperatures and what is acceptable and what isn't acceptable. So it's just, this was Danny Ron getting an update on how they were handling it, because Palm Beach was used again and again as an example.
Sure. Thank you. Commissioner Jody Lee. And then Commissioner Avila Vasquez.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm all for protecting the animals, but this is, is this going to be enforced? Are you going to be able to enforce this?
They had I'm just going off of
No, I'm just saying, are you going to be able to enforce this if we enact it? You, as being in charge of our city code, our code of compliance, are you going to be able to enforce this stuff?
Yes.
Okay, but there's other things in there that says dog, cats, and other animals. What happens if you got parrots in the cages outside in your yard? If they're over 85 degrees, what happens if you got parrots in your cage? They like the weather that's hot. You're going to say you have to get air conditioners for parrots?
That's correct.
Okay, so if you have horses, you have to get air conditioner for your horse.
Well, here it does mention dogs, short breeds,
And other domesticated animals?
all domesticated animals.
Okay, what happens if someone has a miniature goat that's their emotional support animal? Now you have to get air conditioner for the miniature goat?
Well, unfortunately, under the city ordinance, we don't allow goats as a domestic animal.
What happens if it's an emotional support animal? You're going to open up a can of worms because you can't tell someone they can't have an emotional support animal.
Yeah.
So, I'm all about protecting the dog. I get it. And this dog, I get it, it's been there for a long time. It should have been taken care of. The cage should have been different. They should have took it out for exercise. I totally agree with all of that. Mm-hmm. And I don't like how that dog's been living. It's not my dog. I wouldn't have my dog living like that. But the thing is, with opening this can, and the dog's not even there anymore, from what I understand. It's been gone now for a little while. It's gone now, right? Does anybody know where the dog went? No. So we're changing the ordinance for this whole city for one dog that's not even there no more.
No.
We've had a lot. Well, that's my case. But if we don't do this and they bring the dog right back, but from what I understand, this dog's been here. I know there was a past city commissioner that was elected that I think is the one that got him the dog house that he has in that property. Well, if this past city commissioner knew about this dog, why did it this many years now for it to come forward? I'm all about saving it, but like I said, we're already into this thing for, I don't know, probably close to $20,000 for this one dog. We got a woman that sits out at Walmart with kids and begs for me. We're not concerned about her. Not concerned about the ordinances not being done. We're not concerned about stuff falling apart in our city. We're not worried about houses being flooded. We're spending all this money now on a dog. If you think we can enforce this, every part of it, not just one or two little pieces. If you think we can enforce this and you can honestly look and tell us that you can enforce everything on here, I'm all for it. I see a lot of issues with you being able to enforce it.
Mayor, if I may.
Please, go ahead, Mr.
We have a representative from the Sheriff's Department here. I shared this with them a couple of weeks ago with what was coming forward tonight. So I would like to ask him to come up and speak, please.
So can I get Commissioner Avila Vasquez first, and then I do want him to speak.
Sure.
Commissioner Avila Vasquez, please.
Thank you, Mayor. So one of my questions was already answered, which is I wanted to find out the status of Barack. So he's gone. Nobody knows where he is.
Have you asked me, Commissioner? No, I don't know now with the status of the dog.
Okay. The other question I wanted to ask you was, you said something about a permit. And I didn't catch the whole,
Correct. If they're gonna install this permit, I'm sorry, the ordinance that we are about to present, it doesn't require a fan or an AC unit around the enclosure. You know, you have to run electrical lines to that unit, and that requires a permit, an electrical permit to be applied for.
so this ordinance requires this in whatever this animal is going to be kept.
That's correct, on the enclosure portion of it.
And then you said that the city that we copied this ordinance from, when they passed this ordinance, they had a lot of people turning in their animals.
That is correct.
So instead of helping the animals, it affected the animals. And this is why I was asking about Barack, because I received a few calls and comments from people because they were concerned in the condition that Barack was being kept, but their biggest fears was, what if the owner doesn't want to keep him because of all this problem? Where is he going to go? Who's going to take him at the age that he was in his condition? And their fear was that he might be turned into Halifax, and then he might be euthanized. So that was a lot of people's fear. So my concern now is listening to you say that a lot of people turn back on their animal because it's too expensive to do all this, right, for them.
That is correct.
For some of us, we don't care. You know, I just spent $5,000 on one dog, and I have 3 little ones on surgery. So a lot of people can't afford all this stuff, and I think we're going to find ourselves in the same situation as the city. We're going to find ourselves with families who can't afford to keep their animals because we're forcing them to do things that, you know, is it really necessary? I mean, some dogs like to be outside, and some dogs love the outside, the heat, or it depends on how they're raised. So I'm just worried that listening to you say that a lot of dogs were turned in, it might also be happening here in the city of Deltona. And just worried about that.
Thank you, Commissioner Villa-Vasquez. I think the good thing about the workshop is that's what this is for, so we can, excuse me, see some of the issues that they had, because, you know, like I said during the first couple of meetings, these have consequences. So can you follow up with them? Are you able to follow up with them, Glenn? And I'm going to get him right now.
Yeah, and
so we can get like an update. Oh, okay.
Yeah, my other question, when, you know, the lieutenant comes to speak, is how do they enforce these things? You know, do they need some kind of warrant? I'm just going to be asking him.
Lieutenant, if you don't mind, please.
I want to know how the VSO is going to enforce all these new rules.
All right, so first on the topic of Barack, from what I understand and what I'm being told, the entire family has actually moved. Like, they're gone. And that's the reason the dog hasn't been seen. They've moved from the city. In regards to that. In regards to this, us looking it over, the issue we have with enforcing it is it talks about the temperature not reaching above 85 degrees in the enclosure that the animal's being kept in. If that animal's in a backyard, or especially if it's in a fenced-in backyard, they have a right to privacy in the backyard. That's technically a search and seizure if we were to enter the property and go in there and test for that temperature inside that confinement that the animal's in. So we would not have a right to do that unless you had some court order, which for a misdemeanor, that doesn't generally happen, unless in this case you can show the reason behind it is some sort of felony crime of animal cruelty or something of that nature. Secondly, I have to remind you that as with a lot of the City of Deltona ordinances, it would fall on code enforcement and animal control. We don't have the ability to enforce them as they're laid out because there hasn't been an agreement made with the jails in the county and things like that, because this would be a misdemeanor, which would be subject to arrest, which means we wouldn't be able to arrest them into the jail because there's no agreement in place.
Go ahead, Commissioner
So
Villa-Vasquez.
that was also going to be my question. At what point does our code enforcement get the sheriff's department involved if they cannot get residents to follow rules? Or at what point does our sheriff's department get, our code enforcement or code compliance get the sheriff's department involved in at that point, what can the sheriff's department do? Because I think you just answered it, right?
Yeah, right. And for us to be involved with it, the City of Deltona would have to come to an agreement with all of their ordinance violations. The way it works is order violations is when people are picked up with them, the city would be responsible for the housing and things of that nature, the cost associated with that person being detained within that facility. They would pay the county, who in result would pay the jail for that confinement. For us, we wouldn't be involved in the enforcement action of this unless it became a Florida state statute violation.
Florida state.
Right, Florida,
Not the city.
Not on the local level, but it would have to be a Florida state statute violation.
Thank you.
Commissioner Jody Lee.
But according to this,
Mike.
I'm sorry. Ron, according to this, so like I have.
Thank you, Lieutenant.
My dog's 110 pounds, half boxer, half lab. It's 90 degrees outside. Now, I have a doggy door. My dog can come in and out as he wants, but if he lays out in the yard on his own free will and goes under the pool deck and lays there at 90, I can get in for my dog being outside on their pool deck, laying there at his own free will. I have to make him come in or get him an air conditioner while he's sitting out
That
in
would
the
not
yard.
be in violation
I mean,
because
it's-
he has access to inside the house where it's cooler temperatures.
Right, but what happens if he decides on his own as a dog, wants to lay outside in the sun?
So per ordinance, you wouldn't be in trouble. That's what he's going to say. Because access to go back in the house.
But what if, okay,
This is if it was an enclosure outside,
I got a fenced-in yard.
fence and yard, right?
I'm about the animals, but like we so many other issues. And you said a workshop, Mayor. We've had 2 or 3 workshops, 4 workshops. This has been brought up. This dog's been talked about for I don't know how long. We need to either do something or not do something, because there's a pressing thing to city, future land use codes, all kinds of other stuff, and we're still doing this. I mean,
Just in case there's any confusion, on a lot of the cases, like if we have a dangerous dog or neglect or things like that, the city attorney files the case in court. So we handle that portion of it. Sometimes the case gets larger than what was originally thought, and we actually worked with the sheriff's office on some of those cases. I just wanted to, if anybody was confused about it, some of our code cases are handled in-house.
Right. If we don't have access to the property and to see the violation, of course, we can't move forward. But if we have enough evidence that there is a violation, we can enforce these orders, and that's what I'm trying to say. We do reject the sheriff's office, privacy law. We don't go past a certain point when we go to the property. If they don't allow us to access the backyard where the violation might be occurring. Those are the kind of things we have to look at also. We use neighbors' properties if there's no fence, privacy fence. Hopefully we can see it that way. But yes, if we do see the violation, yes, we can address it. That's what I'm trying to say.
Thank you.
And I guess if you catch them in the streets, they've got out of the house, you can see the condition in, and at that point.
That is correct. And those are the things we look for. If we see that it's been neglected, maybe not, the body, it's called body condition of the animals. We have a chart. It goes from 0 to 5. If we see something like that, that's when we say, hey, we have evidence. You need to show us documentation why this dog looks like that. Take it to a vet, shows the proof why this condition is like that. And we move forward from there. With the assistance of the sheriff's office, we do got criminal cases here. And actually, I think we have 2 right now. And see, with the city of Deltona, we got 2 cruelty cases going on. And those just type of cases.
What else do you look, so when you find a dog out in the street or you confiscate a dog from somebody, what other conditions do you look in the dog, file charges against them? Or what do you, like I know shots, license, when they get, you find them in the street, they have to be fixed or anything like that? Are we enforce that because it's in the code?
It's correct. So
Right.
let's just say we pick up a dog that was found loose. Once we start addressing, we find the property owner, we start addressing. First thing is you get up to their rabies vaccine unless they show us proof. They also required to have a city license. Now with the city license, they can't get that until they have a current rabies vaccination. Third thing that we enforce if it's a dog's found loose is spay or neuter. Now, we can't make him get spayed or neutered, but guess what? If they're not fixed, we can actually write them a citation for, I believe it's $250 for not having a spayed or neutered animal.
Is that being enforced?
Yes, ma'am, that's what it is. Yep. So those are minimum 3 things we look for anytime we pick up a dog.
And we can force somebody to spay and neuter their animal?
We can write them a citation if they don't do it. We do work with the animal owner because it does take some time for them to get an appointment to get the animal fixed. Shows proof that there's an appointment set up. We give them to that time. If they're done, we can close out the case.
Thank you.
Now we're back to, so now what this ordinance is talking about these animals. So what about all the wild cats around town? If it's over 85 degrees, are you gonna start picking them up, putting them in air conditioning? I mean, we're opening a can of worms.
You are.
So all the wild cats around the city, we're gonna start picking them up and putting them in air conditioner over 85 degrees. It gets hot in the summer. Now, what about people who have chickens in their yard? If that's a domesticated animal farm, that's their emotional support animal, like we just been going through all this chicken stuff, are we going to make them put air conditioner on the chickens in their yard? I mean, I'm just asking questions, and I don't, where are we going to go with it, or where are we going to end? I mean, I get your point. I know you guys care about the dog, but this opens a can of worms.
I'll get to the public in just a minute. Let's not have back and forth with
this
the
opens up a
residents.
can of worms for a lot of different things that can go off to a whole lot of areas. If you want to talk about just one person's pet or one person's dog or certain people's dogs, it can go into all different directions with these chickens, with people have these ants, they have this, people that have birds out in their yards. I know people that have pet birds in their yard in cages. They're outside all year round. This is Florida. I mean, so it's opening up. I'm just, where does it go? Where does it stop? Where does it end? Look, how many issues with cats? I mean, we have a huge budget. I think it's over $100,000 a year just for TNR program. Are we going to start picking up all these cats and putting them in air conditioning because it's too hot in the summertime? If someone could tell me where it's going to end, I'm good with it.
Commissioner Burbank?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mike.
This is indeed a slippery slope, isn't it? We put verb and adjective and words together, and it just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger and more cumbersome. And the ordinance should just say, treat your animals kindly and be done with it, because I trust that your crew, your code enforcement crew, I trust that they can recognize if an animal is being abused or being neglected or not without a whole lot of legalese behind them. And Commissioner Jody Lee is also correct, but he's missing the dark side. Is if I've got a grudge against neighbor, I could sick you on them just because I don't think I like the way you're treating your dog, and all of a sudden, here we're picking up the tab for that. Here you're getting involved in that. This is just nonsense. The ordinance we've got is fine the way it is without all this extra stuff. Now the exercise part, I like that if you're able to. There does need to be exceptions though. The water part, I don't. Once again, it's private property. I said this last time. I'll say it again. We can't make parents raise their kids without raising kids that are 3 feet high and 3 feet wide. If we can't do it with our children, what do we expect to be done with our dogs? Thank you.
I'd like to go ahead and hear from the public if possible, please.
Jess Carrion, please.
Okay, hi everyone. So I just want to read something that's already in our current ordinances, and it's section 1463, authority. An animal control officer, sheriff, or code enforcement officer is authorized to enforce this chapter and to investigate on public or private property civil infractions relating to animal control or cruelty, and to issue citations as provided in this chapter. So I called and spoke with a guy that he said that he's worked for 20-something years with animal control, whoever that is, and he told me they don't write citations to people because they have to physically go to the courts, and then it costs money and da-da-da-da. And I'm like, wait a minute, you've got 3 pages of citations that are supposed to be written out when people don't have their dogs vaccinated, they've got a guard dog, spay and neuter. I mean, there's 3 pages, that I listed, and he's like, you just don't understand. We can't enforce all these things. So like reading over this, I was, thankful that Marcia did take it upon, looking into it and drafting everything about the temperatures, you know, Broward County is almost exactly the same, except for, or I think it's Broward. Yes, it's Broward County. They have temp 45 and under or 85 and over. Honestly, I don't care about the damn temp. I don't care if it's 86 with the thermostat or 86 with the thermometer. It should be extreme heat. Barack being outside was 115 degrees, dying. I mean, we saw the dog. He literally was walking in circles about to fall over, and he's drinking out of this freaking algae pool. Ridiculous. Animal control went out. Not you, sir, but animal control went out, said it was perfectly fine. And then I go up to an enclosure and I see dirty food, dirty water, dirty everything. So how is it going to be enforced? Our current ordinances are not enforced. So how is anything else going to be enforced whatsoever that we're going to be putting into this? It really sucks for the animals, and there's a lot more than this Barack out there that suffer.
Jesse Simmons, please.
Jesse Simmons, thanks for having me. The city called me to see if I would sit down and go over this law and give my opinion on this law. I sat in that room with my wife, with the city attorney, Mr. Ron, and a couple members of animal control. And to say that the members of animal control acted immaturely and foolishly is an understatement. They said that they couldn't enforce these laws. They sat across the room from us giggling and laughing like high school kids. And then when asked directly what they would do to enforce these laws, they could not answer me directly. So the fact that council members are sitting up here laughing about a dog that's been there for 7 years doesn't surprise me. Where this ends, I don't know the answer to that. I can't give you the answer to where this ends, but I can give you the answer to chickens aren't domesticated animals, and you can write in the ordinance that it has control or no control over special need animals that need to be with people. Your dog has access to the inside. That's the key. Barack did not have access to the inside. Did not. For 7 years. This isn't about just Barack. This is about the other people that live in this city that mistreat their animals, that leave their dogs out, that leave their cats out in temperatures that they shouldn't be left out in. This is past just Barack. Barack has been moved, we hope, to his new home, to his other home. We don't know that for a fact. But this is not just about one dog, and if you are ignorant enough to believe that, that's why this has lasted 7 years.
Charlene Smith, please.
Charlene Smith, District 2. This feels like deja vu because literally 4 years ago, last month, was the first of 3 workshops to rewrite all these ordinances. And while they're terrific ordinances, I keep going back to the same question over and over again. What are we actually enforcing? Because that's what I said last time before we updated them. There was stuff in the old ordinance that they weren't enforcing. I guarantee you now, they're not the last time I asked how many spay and neuters were enforced, I got some number given to me. I don't know where it came from, but you should all be asking to see that. Since April of 2020, how many mandatory spay and neuters, how many tethering cases have they enforced, case numbers, addresses, what was the outcome of that case? Because that's very important data. While all these new regulations are wonderful, because believe me, I'll take anything to protect animals. But realistically, if you're not even enforcing what you already have, which are very comprehensive ordinances, why are we doing this? And Commissioner Bradford talked about at one of the previous meetings making this a much more stringent application for animal tags. That's just going to guarantee people aren't going to apply for animal tags. The state of the rescue community in this county and in this whole country is in a major crisis mode. The amount of animals that are dumped and surrendered every day is astronomical. Every rescue you talk to, they are just completely maxed out. Shelters have turned to starting to euthanize animals again for space. So I appreciate that he brought forward, working with people to keep the animals where they are. So I just urge you to work on what we have now and make sure all the officers are educated and enforcing it before you make even more. Thank you.
Albert Bryan, please.
Like Charlene, I was here 4 years ago. I remember sitting through all this and did ask about the enforcement. And yet, things have still not changed. It's amazing what happens when we don't have real leadership at the helm. But let's think about this. In Daytona Beach, at the mall, they can break a window and yank a dog out of a car. But you can't go into a front yard to take a dog away from an owner? Interesting. So we put more priority on a car than we do a front yard. Okay. So what you're saying is that, let's say if the Daytona police chief, had his dog in his car, went into shop, and then came out and his dog was still in the car, y'all could do something about that. Oh, no, he's a police chief, so y'all wouldn't do anything about that. I got you. Okay. That's right, because there's laws for you and then there's laws for us. We get that. And that's the problem. Until we change the thought pattern in this whole thing, it doesn't matter how many laws she writes up. If this man back here or that man over there isn't going to enforce them the way they're supposed to be enforced, what good is it doing anybody? It's not doing anybody any good. You're wasting your time, you're wasting our money, because now you have to wonder, how much is she charged for us to have this rewritten for the fifth time in 10 years? Something to think about, people.
That ends public comment.
Commissioner Jody Lee, then Commissioner Avila Vasquez.
Well, thank you, Mayor. It's one of the things about this ordinance. I think some people are taking me wrong about the ordinance, because I would never let my dog live this way ever in a million years. I don't think the dog should have been left there this long. But you also have to follow the law, what the state law is, what the city ordinances are at the time. My issue, the other thing is, these ordinances, whether you like them or you don't like them or agree with them or do agree with them, a city ordinance and a law is two different things. A city ordinance isn't law per se. Most city ordinances, if you break a city ordinance on yard sales or doing something with your dog, you're not going to get arrested and go to jail. You will for different things you break the law in. My problem is enforcement. That's the biggest issue with dogs. I would never want someone to have a dog, and I think we should make it simpler. I mean, I know it's going to sound difficult for everyone else to do, but under these conditions where this dog was in his cage, why can't we just make a simpler thing without having all this stuff with all these pages, where if someone's an animal living like that, you just take it? Instead of going, I mean, we're going through a lot of stuff and making it more and more and more and more difficult and difficult. Marcia, I appreciate the faces you're making, but please don't do that. No, I mean, it's code enforcement. If it's living this way.
We're not doing it back and forth.
I mean, a way to, if it's living this way, if you're not treating it right, just make a simple thing where they're going to have to give up their dog or get immediate fines for a certain amount of money. I mean, something, we're opening it up and it's getting difficult and more difficult. Just make it a simple, you treat your dog, you get a fine, it multiplies daily if you're breaking a law, then they can go see the magistrate and the magistrate can make it. That way it's out of your hands, it's out, nobody, if someone has a violation, that dog can live there like that for the next 2 years by the time it gets to the magistrate with paperwork and writing up. How about just a simple one? If it's not being treated right, give them a ticket, they can come argue with the magistrate. If the magistrate just says it's not good for the dog to live in, it's an overdone deal. Makes it a lot simpler.
So I got a question, and then I'll go to Commissioner Avila Vasquez. Danny, are we not enforcing a lot of the animal control ordinances?
We are enforcing these ordinances, yes, sir.
Because I'm hearing the complaints that some of these ordinances are not being enforced.
Yeah, I'm hearing the same thing, but these ordinances are being enforced. Yes, we're in the middle of maybe some changes to the animal ordinances, but the ordinances that are in place, yes, we are currently enforcing these.
Okay. Commissioner Vila Vasquez?
Thank you, Mayor. Danny, do you have a report? Does your staff give you a report, weekly, monthly, or whatever, of any violations they have come across, animal cruelty or anything like that? Do you?
I can create it. The position was code compliance analyst, who usually provides those records. We haven't been able to fill that position yet. I'm currently looking to hire one person for that position to create those. Makes it even easier to create those reports. Staff can create them now, but we can provide that information to y'all.
Okay, so I believe what you're saying that it used to be done. It was sort of like a trouble report with a number on it, and I know that from experience, excuse me, when a problem was reported and it was logged, it creates a number. It came from this person to me, and then the next person goes over that report and wants to see what the status of it is. Was it resolved? If not, why not? And what is the status of it? At what point is it? So I think something like that will probably be good for us. We used to do it monthly, depending on the situation of the complaint, of the report, And then the training, do our staff go to train on, how an animal should be, what they should be looking for, and so forth?
That's correct. Every officer that we have in staff, they go over a 40-hour animal control certification, and there's a test at the very end. Without passing that test, they can't be certified. We currently have 2 officers going through that training this week right now. We also do the code enforcement portion, but we just talk about animals. We also have cruelty animal courses that we provide the officers also. The ones that have been here for a while, for a couple of years, they have most of the training. So now we're looking at the new guys that are just coming on board to make sure they're also getting that training that the other guys have had.
Okay, and does your training, do you compare it to the Sheriff's Department's requirements and training, so they know, if I can't do this, then it's going to the Sheriff's Department?
I'm not sure how their training is. We do have minimum requirements for our position, and they have to meet it by a certain period of time. And if they don't pass, we can't keep them. So, yes, we continue with this continuous education on these officers to keep them up to date. Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, we just had an example, Danny and I had an example, I think, last month, where we had reports on 2 animals that were neglected. We had to go and get a warrant. We had to go to the courts. We worked with the sheriff's, state attorneys, had an officer or a lawyer that was working with us. The people that had the 2 animals that were neglected hired a lawyer, so they lawyered up. We had to go through quite a process in order to get those animals removed from the home and get them to one of the vet clinics, which they are, from what I last heard, they are doing very well, and hopefully will be put in a condition that they'll be eligible to be adopted. But these cases get very complicated now. There's a lot of parties that are involved, and Danny and his folks have a lot of different issues they have to handle. And when we have a case going, you could be talking about 10 to 12 documents and different parties, attorneys, other people are involved. So, I've worked with them on a number of these kinds of cases. It seems like we're getting more serious cases than we've had in the past, and they are very time intensive, but they are working very hard on them. them, and then I offer support as they need it. So I just think that's a practical situation that happened very recently, just to show the kind of interaction and also the fact that we do have code folks that are getting involved and trying to work through a case for these two animals. You know, I mean, that's what we went through to get them to a point where they could hopefully live a healthy life. So I just think it's good to kind of make it personal to us too, so you can see what's really going on and what we're working on.
So let me ask you a question. How long did that whole process take for you to get those dogs out of those homes?
I would say
Mr.
like
Ron?
3 weeks, probably 3 weeks, 4 weeks, Danny.
Yeah, that's correct. And in the last 6 months since I've been in this position, we've actually had 4 dogs, cruelty case or neglect. She just mentioned just 2 out of the 4.
Were they in worse or similar conditions to Brock?
No, these were extreme conditions. The body conditions were all skin and bones. 2 in one property. One was getting abused by the owner's son. Third one was another one, skin and bones, not getting fed or properly cared for.
The reason I'm asking is because if you guys are able to do all that without changing the ordinance, what minor tweaks can we get done? So here's the big issue that I have, right? When I spoke to the owner of Brock, and I told Mr. Jesse about this, and their group weren't the ones that were promoting the violence in it. But when I spoke to the lady, she was telling me her minor son was being harassed, which is a big problem. At the end of the day, whether we like to say this or not, under state statute, that dog is a property of that owner. It is not a human being. It is the property of the owner. For another account, the dwelling of that person where the dog is at, that's their private property, and they have rights. And one of the issues she had was somebody was demanding pictures of the dog inside the house. Well, that's nobody's damn. They don't have the right to that. That's their private property. And then for me to hear that they have now moved out of the city because of that raises more red flags. So is there anything we can do to modify what we have now, where it's a tweak versus redoing this whole code thing? 3 weeks, that seems like it's reasonable. Brock's been there for years. I mean, is there a tweak that can be done that can get this taken care of without us having to rewrite the ordinance? And then, Mr. City Manager, I'd like, at least for now, some type of a monthly report or something for these cases, so we can see and gauge where some of the issues are at and go from there. But if we're hearing some of the problems are enforcement, and it's nothing on Mr. Ron or the sheriff, but I'm even hearing complaints from the sheriff that it's going to be very difficult for them to enforce it. Can we not tweak it in a minor way where we're not changing it to 6 pages out of whatever it was before? And then I'll go to Commissioner Caldwell and then Commissioner Jody Lee.
I'm sorry. I think there's a couple things. One, as the captain told me, we have to differentiate between those where we're doing the state statute, which allows us to bring in the sheriff and state attorney and some other folks into the mix, versus stuff that is just our code stuff. But bigger than that, it's like I sat down and I had Danny Ron there and some of the other code folks with some of these folks that had raised some issues, and to let them see the draft and where we were headed. I think that we need a working group of residents that are interested in these animal issues and have like sit down at the table across from each other and talk about where they feel our deficiencies are. Then we can look and see how we're actually handling some things and then look at it that way. I don't know of anything specific that we need to put in here that we don't have right now, but I do think there needs to be better understanding amongst how the city's handling it their perceptions and their ability to talk about it. We had some really good conversations at the table, and I was happy to hear some of that too, because a lot of times I write ordinances in a vacuum. You know, I may not know certain things or certain circumstances, and when you have other folks that are also very interested in the subject matter, it helps me when I'm writing the document. So I think that if we, and I know we can't have a working group on every single thing that the city's doing, but like with regards to animals, I think that's, you know, because this is just one section of that larger chapter on animals. I think this is something that would really benefit from some kind of group that meets quarterly or something like that, to understand where the conversation is not going well from one side to the other.
What we need to do, honestly, is bring back an ordinance review board. That's just my opinion. I just want us to be very careful we're not violating people's rights. That's my thing, while we take care of the well-being of the animals. So Commissioner Caldwell and then Commissioner Jody Lee. Colwell.
I agree with you, Mayor. Those are some of my concerns too. I do have one question. Are we proactive or reactive when it comes to enforcing these? Do we?
Apologize for that. With animals, we are reactive.
So unless somebody calls in,
that is correct.
We drive by and see an animal being.
Yeah, or when they are large, that's when we start the process, checking all the elements if they're in, compliance with the other things.
Okay. To that, Marcia, you said we had 2 cases that went all the way to court?
We've had a number of, we've had probably in the last year more cases going to court than we have in a long time.
Do we recoup any funds or money for time?
We do, yes. We do put our costs and fees in, and every time we have to do an affidavit and go through it all, and we have never been denied those in the courtroom with regards to our fees.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Jody Lee.
Mayor, I'd like to get a consensus so we can push this forward to just the way it is, get it to the whole commission, we can vote on it, and then we can tweak it as it comes along. But I think we should just pass this. This gives them a little bit more broad to take care of Barack and like at least other dogs and other animals in that kind of setting. It might help them in the long run. Barack's gone now. That was gone, but it might help other animals in the city in the future. I think we should just get a consensus to send this to the full commission and take a vote, and we can tweak it as it comes.
Commissioner Burbank.
I don't know.
Your mic is pointed up.
You made the point, Commissioner Jody Lee, that we've spent a small fortune on this already, just getting to this point. Sure, okay, fine.
Commissioner Avila Vasquez. Commissioner Colwell. And then, yes, so. Okay. So, yeah, City Manager, do you have any comments?
I have none.
You have none? Okay, meeting's adjourned.
This ordinance that we wrote, this will be, this year is going to the commission for vote.
So it can't be edited?
No, you can't.